Hello, my name's Tom and welcome back to my channel and to another PhD vlog. Now, I'm very aware that it is currently the beginning of a new academic year, and so there is currently lots and lots of PhDs starting their course of study all over the globe. The aim of today's video then is to let you in on some of the software that I found really useful to my studies in the 2 years since I was in the same position that you are now. Now, if you're one of the lovely people who is a year or further into their PhD already, then I'd really appreciate it if you could drop your own thoughts down below in the comments, as that will be really useful, I'm sure, to any new PhDs who do stumble across this video. And if you have just started your own PhD, then potentially you might find some of my other videos interesting or useful, so do please consider subscribing, potentially turning on the notifications, and hopefully you will find some useful bits of wisdom in there somewhere. Without further ado then, let's crack on with it. So I wanted to start by recommending the app which is the absolute workhorse of my PhD, and that is Scrivener. So a PhD thesis, indeed any piece of dissertation length work from kind of undergraduate upwards, is a long piece of work. It's going to consist of lots of chapters, each consisting of lots of sections within that, and that is a lot of writing to both keep within your head or on the page. And word processors such as Microsoft Word or Google Docs aren't exactly optimized for this. People who do use Microsoft Word or Google Docs for writing their thesis tend to find they have lots and lots of folders with lots of different chapters and sections in them, and when you want to find a piece of text to maybe incorporate into something you're working on 6 months later, it can be a real struggle to track down that particular passage of writing on your hard drive. Scrivener, however, operates slightly differently. See, Scrivener, rather than expecting you to keep all your writing within one long document, instead allows you to divide your writing up into short sections, which it calls scrivenings. Within one file, all viewable within the same window, it then lets you sort these scrivenings into different folders, or indeed nest scrivenings inside one another in the browser window on the left-hand side of the screen. When writing such a long piece of work, potentially over a number of years, what this allows you to do is at some points focus in on very specific bits of writing, and at other times be able to take that macro view of seeing a whole chapter or the whole thesis at once. Furthermore, Scrivener has this great side-by-side or top-bottom view, which allows you to see two scrivenings, two bits of writing at the same time. Scrivener is available for both Mac and for Windows, and there are some differences between the two versions, but not all that much. The kind of basic concept is the same, and it is really that basic concept that makes it so great. There is also some other options out there of software that works in a kind of similar way. One of the biggest competitors is Ulysses. However, Scrivener's the original, and I got it quite early on, and it will always have a soft spot for me because of that. Finally, if you want to check it out, there is a free trial available on the Scrivener website, and it lets you try it out for 30 days to see whether it works for you, and I'd really recommend doing that, and I have a feeling you'll probably end up buying it in the end. None of these are adverts, by the way. I do just get like strangely passionate about apps and software that work really well. So let's continue with app recommendation number 2, and that is Bear. Now, if you've watched my video from some time ago now, where I talked through my sort of system for taking notes on articles and books that I'm reading, you'll see that at that point I was using Evernote. And Evernote is still a great option if you want a dedicated note-taking application. However, I found that over time, Evernote kept having more and more features added onto it, and in the end, it kind of did a lot more than I wanted to. And it was really easy to get bogged down into thinking about what font I was going to be writing my notes in or how I was going to format them, and actually I didn't really need that. All I needed was a nice clean space where I could tap away for 20 minutes, a kind of stream of hopefully not incomprehensible garbage. And Bear does this really well. In place of Evernote's notebook system, what it does is it has a tagging system where all you do is anywhere within the body of a note, you simply kind of hashtag in a word and it will collect together all of the different notes with that tag in them in a really easy to use browser format. Again, you can like nest tags so that in a similar way to folders, but I just find it really intuitive and great to use. Unfortunately, Bear is only available on Mac and iOS devices, so Windows users, you may have to go elsewhere. However, I think the point still stands generally that it is really, really useful, particularly if you're currently early on, to start off with an app system which is just going to let you take lots and lots of notes, but also to organize those in a way where you're never going to be too far away from the thought that you once wrote down that you now need to locate again. For app recommendation number 3, it's on to reference management. And I'm going to kind of cheat with this one and sort of half recommend 2 different bits of software. So referencing software allows you to keep all the literature that you've read or potentially need to read in one dedicated program. And particularly, it's angled towards making it really easy to use those references and those citations within work that you're writing, usually in a format or a system that developers call cite while you write. Now, in the past, I've tried doing this manually and entering in all my references just with kind of brackets, date, colon, page number, and it was a really tough thing to do because it meant that often when I deleted a citation, I'd forget that I deleted that, and then my bibliography would be massive, or I'd add in a citation then miss it off the reference list. Also, it was a huge problem if I wanted to send someone just part of a chapter or just one chapter, because then I had to look at this massive bibliography for my whole thesis and try and work out which ones were in that chapter. Referencing software takes away all of this hassle, and I would really, really recommend finding one that works for you. Now, for the first couple of years of my PhD, I was a huge advocate of Mendeley. Mendeley is free, and it also allows you to keep PDFs in the cloud and to annotate them and highlight them and take notes on them in a really great manner, which means they're accessible from multiple devices. However, I have recently sold out and stumped up for Endnote. And I did this for a number of reasons, but the main one is that Endnote allows you to use plain text citations in a special format, which you can type in absolutely anywhere, whether you're working in Bear or Scrivener or Word, and which it will then be able to read when you finally come to format a reference list in Word later on. And this is something that Mendeley, I almost am absolutely sure, does not have, and which I find massively, massively useful. It's worth saying that Endnote is a little bit clunkier than Mendeley somehow, because Mendeley is also quite clunky. Yet I find that particular bit of functionality so useful. And if you do decide to go for Endnote rather than Mendeley, then there are some really good student discounts, which means it's slightly more financially palatable than it could be. Recommendation 4 then is Things 3. Doing a PhD involves doing a huge number of very different tasks, and if you're as unorganized as me, then keeping track of all the things that you've got to do will be a huge challenge. Particularly, it can be really easy to really focus in on one area of responsibility that you've got, such as teaching, and almost completely neglect something else, such as thesis writing. So a powerful task management app can really help you both to keep a track of all the things that you need to do, but also to kind of schedule those in a manner that is achievable and timely. I've used a number of different apps like this over the years, including Wunderlist and Todoist, which I used for a considerable amount of time and I think is really worth checking out, particularly as it is kind of mostly free. However, I recently moved myself over to an app called Things 3. Now, this is the most expensive app I'm going to recommend here, particularly for the pretty simple task that it fulfills. However, I've found it's kind of worth it. It's got a really slick design which makes you want to use it, and it also syncs pretty seamlessly between different devices, something which Todoist didn't always do in my experience. One of the particularly great things about Things 3 is the way that it lets you really nest tasks within bigger projects. So you can have a task within a heading, within a project, within an area of responsibility. And I just find that really useful for being able to get my head around all the things that I need to do. It also really helps with being able to plan projects, because I can have a chapter as a project, and I can really break down different sections with different headings within that project, and then I can work out kind of time limited short tasks. I just find that so useful, and I find it a lot more intuitive than a lot of the other apps that I've used. App 5 is perhaps my most sort of lukewarm recommendation from this list, and that is Toggl. I've mentioned on my video about kind of deep work how I find it really useful to kind of keep a track of how I'm using my time. Indeed, I'll link to that video up wherever they go. Being really mindful about this is a fairly new development for me, but the app that I've been using to keep a track of how much time I've been spending on different projects is Toggl. Now, I'm pretty sure Toggl has actually been designed for kind of service-based businesses where different employees need to keep a track of how much time they've been spending on different contracts. However, I've kind of been using it to my own purposes as a way of tracking how long I've been working for and what project I've been working on, or element of a project I've been working on for that particular time. So in essence, it's a glorified stopwatch, but that doesn't mean I haven't been finding it really useful. Essentially, it's kind of the concept that I'm advocating for here, rather than the Toggl app itself. And indeed, if you use the Pomodoro technique, for example, there are actually a number of different apps out there, such as Pomodoro Tracker, I think is one, which will let you it will both act as your 25-minute timer for your Pomodoros, but it will also let you track those and kind of label them with what you were doing with that Pomodoro, which can work in a similar way. So that just about wraps us up. These 5 apps, or well, I mean, it ended up being a lot more than 5, but these apps are all ones which I use every single day in the course of my studies, and I don't see that changing at any point in the next 12 months as I head towards completion. No doubt technology can be a very distracting force when you're working on a long-term project, which at times will definitely seem tedious. However, it can also be a massive time saver and really help you to be working to your best and getting your absolutely best work done. As I said below, if there's anything that you think I've missed or you massively disagree with me about any of these apps, then do let me know down in the comments, both for me, maybe I'll change what I'm using, or for anyone else that comes to watch this video after you have. Likewise, if you think this video is a vague net positive for the world, if it's been useful for you, then please do consider giving it a thumbs up. That kind of boosts its rankings a little bit and helps other people stumble across it too. Other than that, thank you very much for watching and have a great week.